Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
You're watching Conversations with Jennylyn, and today I'm continuing with my pandemic series, COVID-19, and I am very fortunate to share my guest with you, and he is the Honorary Robert Lunn. That's correct, right?
That is correct, Jenny. Yes, thank you.
And I'm so grateful that you're able to spend this time with me.
I'm very pleased to be with you as well. So, yeah.
Yes, welcome to Conversations with Jennylyn. I know there's so much to talk about right now, and my point of doing this is just to share people.
Sure.
I'm so happy you're an honorary judge, but I am sure you have a great story for us, and so welcome to the show. And
yes,
I will let you introduce yourself, and then we go from there.
Very good. Yes, as you stated, I am now a retired New York State Supreme Court judge. Still bear the title Honorable Robert J. Lunn, retired. I served 14 years on State Supreme Court,
Wow.
and I had the benefit of being on the trial bench for 10 years. It's a 14-year term. It's not the highest appellate court like most people are used to. It would be equivalent, I believe, in California to your superior courts. And the first 10 years I was on the trial bench, and my last 4 years I was appointed by then Governor Pataki, the governor of New York, to an appellate court. And I served there for 4 years. So that was my 14 years. I traveled all over the state of New York. It's quite an experience.
All of your hard work you've contributed to this nation and to us.
Well, it was truly, it was, I know this is a cliche, but it was truly my pleasure to do the work on behalf of the people of the state of New York.
So before we go into the coronavirus discussion, do you miss that? Do you miss actively being in the court system every day in the Supreme Court role?
I do. To be honest about it, I actually kind of fell in love with my docket, my cases, the people I met, and it's been very difficult to disassociate from that, although I found a kind of a bridge to my new career as a law partner, where I've been the last 11 years now with a local law firm. I'm a partner there, and I do what's called ADR, alternative dispute resolution work. So my practice is exclusively mediations and arbitrations. So.
Okay. So what is the one thing, this is my last question pertaining to that role, what is the one thing you took away from all those years of functioning in that role that you would like to share with us?
Okay, the main takeaway, to answer your question, and I presided over many, many jury trials.
Yes.
My main takeaway is that there is definitely a better way to resolve disputes than a courtroom, a jury, expert witnesses, attorneys going after each other for a week, 2 weeks. I had one 4-week trial. It's a very expensive, time-consuming, slow process, and that's what kind of launched me into my present career, if you will, that there's a better way to do this. And I think that applies universally to all states, all courts. Trials are not the best way to resolve disputes. And that's the main takeaway.
So if you could get these issues resolved in arbitration, what you're suggesting is that would be the way to go.
I would rank it mediations first,
Okay.
arbitration second.
Okay.
Arbitrations are much like a trial, but a little bit more efficient, a little more expedited, less costly. Mediations, you're not bound to anything. You try to get both sides, or the last case I had 4 sides, to agree on a resolution where both sides have input, much less expensive. And I often tell the participants that I know I have a good deal worked out when both sides are frowning a little bit and walking away slightly unhappy. to me, that's a measure of a fair settlement. Nobody gets 100%, but both sides give and take and get to share their side of the story. So yeah, that's my main takeaway. To answer your first question.
Thank you. I'm
Yes.
smarter now in terms of that part of my world and knowledge.
Yes.
And thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Sure.
So now I thought, you know, the world is in such a unusual place, is the word that's popping into my head now because of this unprecedented pandemic. You lost a friend today to this coronavirus. How about if we start there?
10:30 this morning, somebody I've known for probably 35, 40 years now, very good friend, very sad, and very quick. And I think the one takeaway, if I might share with your viewers, is that nobody is immune from this horrible, horrible disease, nightmare, call it what you will. He's the last person you could have ever imagined, a few years older than myself, but very vital. He actually owned a horse farm not far from where I live now, and a very active man, very robust, very healthy. And he was diagnosed about 4 days ago. 2 days ago, he was hospitalized. Last night, he was in a coma. This morning, he died. And it's just very, very sad situation.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Could you explain from what you know, what happens in a situation like this? You mentioned prior to this recording that his children were able to say goodbye to him, which I've heard in other countries, families aren't allowed to do that.
Well, yes, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail because I'm sure people would define it differently. They had to go in, they were allowed 1 hour as he was in a semi-coma, slipping in and out of a coma last evening, as I understand it. They had full protective gear on. They were escorted in by the police authorities, escorted out by the police authorities, 1 hour to say their goodbye, and nobody was with him this morning, you know, wife, children, when he finally passed. So, yeah, they were allowed very strained circumstances. So, you know, it's just very sad. And actually, that was something I hadn't thought too much about because I never thought it would happen to Dave, that this was going to be something he would experience. So the lesson for your viewers, if I may, is nobody is immune from this, and you really have to take proper precautions. And I could go on to say he hadn't been out of his house in a month and a half, 2 months. So whatever infected him or whoever had to have been in the house without proper protective gear, or maybe a package, or I'm not sure, but it's just a very sad situation.
Very sad.
Yeah.
So now that he's passed, are they going to be able to have a formal funeral for him? You are in Rochester.
I am. I'm in Rochester, New York, just outside, just a little bit east of Rochester and Penfield, New York. Dave lived in Penfield also, probably 6 or 7 miles down the road from me. Our children were in preschool together, and both our kids are into their mid to late 30s now, so that tells you how long I've known him. As far as the funeral arrangements, that's what I mean is collateral damage to this whole disease, and that's just another element. No funeral home will pick up the deceased at the moment, and they're having to store the fatalities in a freezer truck until this all passes, hopefully, and then they can give them a proper funeral, but nothing until then. So, yeah,
It's horrible. It's really raving havoc in the world.
It is. You're so right about that. We watched a service yesterday on television, and to see the church totally empty while the minister priest gave the service to a totally empty church, but being videotaped, much like you're doing now. And it's nothing like this in my lifetime, and I'm almost 73 years old, so very, very different, very sad.
Very, very sad.
Yeah.
So what have you been observing in Rochester, where you live?
Well, again, the speed with which this has come on, Jenny, is astounding. I'm a member of a 17-member law firm, medium-sized, but they've been practicing in Rochester since the 1920s. And there are 17 partners, and we had 4 or 5 associates, all our support staff. And within 2 weeks, we were shuttered up. There's no in and out, no client appointments. Everything is being done remotely. I've come to, I personally have come to learn what the app Zoom is all about. There's a free endorsement for Zoom, I guess, but that's how I'm conducting my mediations and arbitrations now. But our firm is totally shuttered up at the moment. There's no client traffic, and everything is being done remotely. We're all working remotely from home, all of the law partners. So.
Well, today I read that Boris Johnson is hospitalized.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I saw that.
Yes, in my entire lifetime, I've never seen anything that it just affects people, regardless of who you are, what you do. You know,
it's so true. It makes no distinction whatsoever. You're absolutely right about that. It doesn't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. Nobody is immune from this. And the only thing I can, somebody asked me the other day whether I'd seen anything else like this in my lifetime. And again, the answer is no, but probably the closest disease that I can recall barely. I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, but I have an older brother who had classmates that were afflicted with the polio virus, the disease, crippled, iron lungs, people dying, no age discrimination whatsoever. And he had several classmates that suffered from that before. God bless Dr. Salk for coming along with the vaccine, because it's essentially been eliminated. And hopefully something like that will happen with the Cororna Virus as well.
Well, my hope is that you or no one close to you will be contaminated, that no one else is. Not to you, not to me, no one else.
I agree. Yeah, my hope as well. If nothing else, I've taken, I had mostly taken to heart everything they had said, but my wife and I agreed this morning that this was kind of the final, this was way too close to home. And we're just not going to go out probably for a month or two. We have enough provisions in the house, and we'll make do.
Are you following that protocol and wearing gloves and masks everywhere you go when you do go out?
We are, but like I said, we made a decision jointly today. We're not going out anymore, except for walks. I have to get some exercise, so I do that. So yeah.
So do you think you're equipped at home? Because it seems like we're going to be on lockdown for a while. From your guesstimation, how long do you think we're going to have to be quarantined as a nation?
Well, I like the question because I will emphasize the word guess in guesstimation. And that's all it is. It's a pure guess. You try to digest all the information, but honestly, the information changes daily. So I'm going to estimate at least another 4 to 6 weeks. And then maybe it'll start to taper off the restrictions, hopefully, because if not, there's not going to be an economy left. Our law firm, for example, is totally shut down. Fortunately, I have a practice that allows me to work remotely, much as we're doing now with some of the software.
So I know everybody's concern is the economy, but if we don't follow the rules of the virus.
Right.
The virus is running the show right now.
That's well put, very well put, yeah.
And we go back out there because we have to save our economy.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to lose control of controlling it. I think part of the problem, based on what I'm learning from people I'm speaking with and what I'm reading and hearing from people in other countries. I was speaking to a doctor in China last night. And the thing is, because we are unable to tell how many people are contaminated, that's part of the problem, because there are a few people probably with remarkable immune systems that are not showing the symptoms but are spreading it. And I was reading that if you have the BCG shot, then you're not responding as dramatically or suffering the symptoms like people who haven't got it. And I have the BCG shot because I grew up in America, and all the children in my time were given it. So I don't know how true that is. I don't know what studies have been done to support this claim. But my fear is if we start getting back out there, you know, before it's safe, then will we start the whole problem over again? What's your feeling on that?
Well, I've heard certain experts say exactly what you're saying, that is a risk, that if we push this, accelerate the timetable, that there is the possibility that it could bleep up again and you know, kind of tick up and end up with additional cases. I think you're correct. Excuse me. One of the problems is that many carriers of the virus apparently, many carriers of the virus are totally asymptomatic, no symptoms whatsoever.
Exactly.
That's a problem because you can't take precautions if you're not aware yourself that you have it, and you can spread it. And I think that's what's happened to many. And there does seem to be, well, initially they thought it was less harmful to younger people, younger generation. And you probably saw the same videos I did with younger people partying in Florida. Now, I remember when I was 19 or 20, it was a while ago, but I thought nothing could hurt me or touch me. And I don't think they really thought it through that they could infect grandparents, parents. I think much of the problem stems from that too. So it's, yeah.
And I noticed that New York was hit very hard, and I would imagine since it's such a dense city and since public transportation is so popular, I guess that's one of the things that saves us in San Francisco.
Right.
We haven't got, you know, people don't depend as much on the rail and
that's a good point.
Transportation, and I think that's probably how you guys have spread it so quickly in New York, because I visited New York a few times and been on the trains, and they're really packed.
God bless you. You must have suffered even without this virus, because you're correct. They cram them in like sardines in a sardine can. It's just like so crowded, and I think you're right. Where I practice, where I live, is actually about 6.5, 7 hours from New York City. So we don't have that issue. But I used to go down there regularly to preside over cases. We would help them as visiting judges with their caseloads and move them along and get their dockets moving. So it's hard to visualize. I see, and you've probably seen the same video, 6th Avenue, Broadway, completely empty now. I can't even imagine what that's got to be like. And if you've been to New York, you know what I'm talking about as well.
Yes. In a way, I feel like even though it's so dramatically detrimental to the economy and so many families and so many lives, I feel I've been noticing there's so many lessons to be learned as well. And I feel the number one lesson is gratitude.
It's so true. In fact, I've read posts to that effect. You might have posted something. I think I came to know you through LinkedIn as my recollection, but so many posts that say exactly that in order to counteract some of the emotional pitfalls that you might have related to this, you got to count all your blessings. Just count all your blessings, and you learn about gratitude. And I have a lot to be thankful for. So I try to focus on that and not let myself get too down over this. And,
because I think we live in such a fast-paced world, and if you are not willing to keep up with the pace, you're left behind. And so we're almost forced into this go, 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 go. And
so true,
we don't stop to smell the roses or even appreciate some of the things now we are missing. And in missing them, we're appreciating their value, which throughout our lifetimes we've taken for granted.
No, that's so very true. You're right. And it's kind of forced us to slow down and evaluate and take a look at that. And there aren't too many positives to what's going on, but that's one of them. And you said that you grew up Guyana, right? South America? Or,
Yes, I did.
yes. And you and I talked about this on the phone once, that I had the benefit, and I think it's helped me as a mediator because I'm able to see a lot of different angles, and as a judge, that I grew up in a small town initially in Massachusetts, population about 7,000. Then we abruptly moved to Guatemala, Central America. And then I came back to Massachusetts, and then I went to high school in Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico. And from there, came to the University of Rochester. That's what brought me here, and then on to Cornell Law School at the end of that. At the same time I came to Cornell, my parents moved to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and my dad did business there as well as Rio de Janeiro, but not in the conventional sense. My dad was primarily a poultry farmer, chicken farmer, but he was good at what he did. So he taught me a lot of life lessons. He taught me a lot of life lessons along the way. And I'm very grateful for that. Plus I had the experience of living internationally and meeting a lot of different people. So.
Is that what took you around South America? Because it seems like you really traveled around to the various countries and on the continent of South America.
Well, except when I was pursuing higher education. I was 4 years at the University of Rochester, 3 more years at Cornell Law School. But yes, and then I went right into private practice. But my background, I think it gave me a good base, a good understanding of humanity. I'm just very grateful. It's not the way I drew it up on the chalkboard, I'll be honest. It just happened. It kind of happened that way, but yeah.
How often do our lives align with what we've drawn on the chalkboard?
I would venture to say almost never. Almost never, right?
Right?
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I look at my life and I think, boy, it's a far cry from what I anticipated and planned.
It's so true.
You just
It's
kind
so
of have
true.
to go with the flow and do what you're being called to do.
Exactly.
I've learned sometimes the universe will grab us by the head and drag us where we are trying to avoid going, but where we need to go.
Oh, yes. No, I agree with that completely. It's so true. And, I thank my dad every day. I'm first generation college. Neither my mom or dad went to college or university,
Wow.
but they were well schooled in life lessons. And I'll just share a quick story. When I was elected to New York State Supreme Court in '94, I was sworn in 1995. My dad held a Bible. I took the oath of office. And when that was done, and fortunately the microphone was turned off at that point when it was done, he leaned over and he said, "If you ever forget your roots, I couldn't be more proud of you right now, but if you ever forget your roots, I will personally come back to this courtroom and I will personally rip that black robe right off your back." And I knew he meant it. So that kept me very centered, Yeah.
How long,
Was,
how many years did he get to enjoy watching his son as a judge before he left?
yeah, that was, I'm trying to think, 94. And then 9/11 happened in 2001. He died 10 days before, September 1 of 2001. So roughly 6 or 7 years. Interesting question though, because reflectively after my dad passed, I'd be sitting in my chambers outside my courtroom, and whenever I had a tough problem, I just kind of reflexively reach for the phone, and then I'd have to remember he's no longer but he was with me. He still is with me in many ways. I mean, I can tell from the life lessons that he taught both myself. I have an older brother and a younger sister. The three of us learned a lot from our parents. So I was fortunate, very fortunate.
Yes, I was thinking of the people who left this planet before this surreal experience that we're all, this unprecedented madness is what.
Yes, I agree. It's, like I said, the only thing that came close to it, and probably not equivalent at all, but for me, the only thing that came close was the whole polio epidemic back in the 1950s. and I was pretty young at that point. I think maybe 6, 7, 8 years old when that all came down. Yeah, that's but nothing like this in my lifetime. So
Well, I was driving yesterday not yesterday, a few days ago, because it's been raining in California, I think since Friday. But I had to get out of the house to get some fresh air, and I went for a drive.
yes.
And I think it was one of the first times since I'm living here, and I've been here 35 years. I'm only 36, in case you
Right. You, I was gonna say, you don't look old enough to have been in the States 35 years.
very sweet. Thank you. And I was noticing how beautiful the air was, clear. And I just thought, for a moment I stopped and I thought, I guess it's not all bad. It's
No,
almost
that's true.
forced us off the streets
Yeah,
to clean the atmosphere. There's not the same amount of combustion. Most factories are on shutdown. The cars aren't going. And I feel like the earth is breathing. And so that
yeah.
when we do return, we are
No, that's a good point.
returning to a much cleaner atmosphere. And
Sure.
hopefully we're all learning now when we go back to always be cautious, careful, wash our hands more than we used to, and just to
Yeah.
practice
You
better.
probably can't see my hand. You probably can't see my hands on camera, but they're
I
raw. I wash my hands so many times a day now that yeah, they're. I had to borrow my wife Paula's hand cream the other day just to try to get the cracks healed again. But you're right. That's a very good point. Very good point.
And so I was thinking it's all bad in one way, but I always try to see some light in every dark situation. And
Yeah.
that is where I found light. I think it also forced us to get to know some of the people we live with. Because
Sure.
homes
Sure.
where people were passing each other like airplanes in the sky.
Oh,
And
so true.
never
Yeah.
got to spend time together. And people are probably discovering they really like or not like people they live with.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful we've had an opportunity to talk because I think somehow I discovered you on the app LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure that was
Yes.
the common meeting spot, but we've never really had a chance to video chat like this. So I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, thank you. And I am grateful to you for taking the time to spend with me.
Sure.
I am very fortunate because since I decided to do this series, I've got 20 people around the world. And
Okay.
some of them are doctors that are currently treating patients, and they've agreed to do
Oh gosh. Yeah.
this with me. And I feel so blessed because my idea to do this came from conversations I've had with several of my friends who were concerned that mainstream media is not really bringing us the facts. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
news is slanted one way or the other, and it's all sensation and supporting
Oh, it's so true.
political party they believe in or that they support. And so I thought, you know what? The best way to get stories from people are from the people living in the various countries and just telling us what they are going through, whether they're a doctor,
Sure.
a lawyer, a farmer, a housewife. I'm interested. I want to know.
Sure.
And I want to share it with other people because
Well, and I read a little bit about your bio, and I think you correctly identified that you've had that curiosity in you since you can remember early grade school. You were always asking questions. So
yes.
I'm very flattered that you reached out to me, number one. Number two, when you have an international market for exactly what you're doing now, don't forget me. Come back and we'll do another follow-up interview sometime.
How could I forget you?
You're funny.
I never forget people. I feel that every single person I've met in my life, I mean, I'm not saying I remember them all, but the people I remember have left indelible marks.
Oh, that's very, very kind. Yes.
And you have done that. And prior to this interview, I had a telephone conversation with you because we've been attempting to do an
We
interview.
have.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately, when I was in New York, you were in Rochester, we couldn't connect.
Yeah,
But I believe that everything happens when it should.
I agree with that. Things, another cliche, things happen for a reason. And this has worked out really well for me anyway. So.
Well, thank you. See, God made us all sit down and we're doing the things we have to do.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And I hear people saying
But
they're bored, and I feel like at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, where did the day go? There's so many
I
projects
know,
I'm
I
working.
know. That's true. The other piece of that, though, is I woke up the other morning and I had no idea what day it was. And I think I'm cognitively, I think I'm still with it, but every day was kind of like merging into the next day. And I had to stop and think, what day of the week is this? Yeah, it was it.
I do that too. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what's the date? Because
yeah,
that's another thing that I'm not always conscious of until I
sure.
need it for something. You just sort of roll from one day into the next.
That's true. And before I forget to mention it, my younger sister, I mentioned a few moments ago, lives in Sacramento. She used to live in San Francisco. And my older brother lives in Portland, Oregon. So I'm kind of the outlier on the East Coast here. They both live on the West Coast. And the next time I come to the West Coast, I'll make sure we meet in person when it's safe to do that. And that would be that'd be great.
I would love that.
Yeah.
So, why do you think you're all the way on the East Coast? Is it because you went to school out there?
That's exactly the reason. When I came, I was in high school in San Juan, Puerto Rico, 3.5 years there. I graduated there. When I came to Rochester, it was my cousin that lives in a neighboring county, not the same city, who said, what kind of clothes do you have for the winter? And I arrived in the summer, it was like June. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, you're not going to wear the wardrobe you had in the Caribbean. I said, well, she said, how many sweaters do you have? I said, one. She said, I think you're going to need to go shopping with me. So I wasn't really introduced. I kind of forgotten. I was born in Plymouth, Massachusetts,
Oh,
lived my first 13 years in New England. So it wasn't like I hadn't seen snow in winter, but the mind is a funny thing. It tends to block out some of the some of the bad parts of your experiences. And I'd forgotten how cold and snowy it was up here. But I made it through 4 years and then 3 more years at Cornell, which is 2 miles southeast of here. So yeah.
well, I grew up in South America, and you have no concept of cold when you're there.
Oh, that's true.
They're cold, and you're like, okay, cold, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And when I
Yeah.
first came here, I came in a marriage. My ex-husband was a dentist who was
Hmm.
in the Caribbean, and we met, got married. That's how I came here.
Sure.
The first time he took me to San Francisco, he says, Jenny, it's cold there. I was wearing a short skirt and a shirt with short sleeves.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Okay, and I had a sweater. And he kept telling me it's cold. And when I got there, I could not believe that
How cold.
it get that cold if you're not in a refrigerator or a
Sure.
freezer.
Sure.
And I
That's funny.
remember feeling like someone had ice picks picking at my eardrums. It was so painful. And
Oh, it's
so
painful. It can be painful. You're right.
yes, you were living in South America, you know, I grew up on the equator.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because it's the northern part of South America. I forgot.
Exactly.
Forgot that. Yeah.
So I had no concept of any place being as cold as it was that
And
day.
then when you go south of that, the seasons are reversed. I remember when my parents lived in Brazil. Those are the two things I remember. The seasons were reversed, and the water going down the drain went in the opposite direction from what it did up northern hemisphere. So those
Yeah.
are my two recollections. But
So before we run out of time, I wanted to ask you about
sure.
Rochester and the coronavirus. Do you know how many contaminated cases you have there? Do you know how many people have died from this virus to date? Do you have any statistics?
I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, much less than New York City,
Okay.
but still, I think the death rate is probably, I'm going to estimate somewhere in the range of 600-700. And when I say Rochester, the surrounding counties included, so not just Rochester, Monroe counties where we sit, and many more diagnosed with the disease. And my only warning, I said it before, but I'll say it before we conclude, don't think that it can't happen to you. You just have to be so careful. And that includes you, Jenny. But except, a ride is fine, but you just have to be so careful. And I mean, we get mail now. My wife wipes it down with Clorox wipes before we even open the mail. So she's pretty careful.
I got a package the other day, and
Yeah,
someone told me, don't bring packages in your house because some FedEx employee was seen spitting on them.
sure,
I mean,
sure.
what goes on in the mind of the people who do these things? I don't understand. But I
Yeah,
got some gloves and I went to my front door and I ripped the box open and took the contents out
yeah,
and brought them inside and destroyed the box and left it outside. And then
good
I
for
found
you.
myself thinking, I feel like I'm not doing this, but it's,
Okay.
sign of the times.
Did I hear you say striker box? Or you said something box.
Oh, I said
Right.
I destroyed the box,
Oh, destroy the box. Okay,
left
okay.
it outside.
Yeah, we have like a ton of surgical gloves, and we've got the N95 mask, which was completely coincidental. One of our good friends, probably 6 months ago, before any of this, was in Home Depot and said, "Oh, I think I'll buy some of those." But we're not hoarding them. I think we have a total of three, maybe three or four. But, yeah,
Well,
so
a good
just
friend of
protect
mine,
yourself.
yeah, a good friend of mine who's a doctor in China shipped some masks to me, and I was
Yeah,
planning to take them to the hospital because I heard the hospitals have a
sure.
shortage of masks, but he told me they're not for the hospital, so
Okay.
it wouldn't
Yeah.
make a big difference. But I think half a loaf is better than none. I'm still going to take them.
Yeah, yeah, just be careful. You can't be too careful anymore. And people may look at you somewhat funny. It doesn't matter. I look at that and I think, well, I'll probably never see you again. So I'm okay. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to take care of me and protect everybody. So, yeah.
Well, I have enjoyed this time with you so much. I
I
forgot
have,
we're doing a TV interview. We're just not catching up like old friends.
yes, no, I've enjoyed this. And remember, you promised me when your ratings go through the roof and everybody in the world is after you, from CNN to Fox to whoever, that you remember me, that you come back and we'll renew our conversations.
I can only hope. Before we wrap this up, what do you
Yes.
want to leave with my viewers?
What, what was the question?
Wrap this interview up. What message would you like to leave with my viewers?
Be careful, be safe, take care of yourself, take care of others, because by taking care of yourself, you will take care of others. And it's important. And use the time, you said it earlier in this interview, use the time to reconnect like you and I are doing right now, to get to projects that get put off because we don't have enough time. Nobody can use that excuse anymore. We have time. So that's my message.
I thank you so very much for this. I've thoroughly
Yes.
enjoyed it. I'm hoping someone that's watching this is going to walk away from something you said that will make their life better. That's my whole goal for doing this. And I thank you all for watching Conversations with Jennylyn.
And thank you, Jenny. Yep.
You're welcome. When a conversation is all you need to be inspired.
So
My
true.
ending, which my girlfriend Laura came up with. So I
Oh,
want
I love that. You tell Laura to keep channeling that creativity. That's beautiful. That's very good.
Thank
Very,
you so much. Stay safe.
and you as well.
We will be in touch.
Okay. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you so
Yep.
much.
Bye-bye, Jennylyn.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
See you soon.
Okay, hope so.
Okay, bye-bye.